This morning, I don't know whether you're just encouraged, overflowing with joy, struggling, or somehow empty. Somebody once said to me, I feel like I'm burnt out. Have you ever felt like that? Or you feel dry? Well, this morning, my message is a new perspective. My text comes from 2 Kings chapter 6. Let me give you a little insight. Syrian king decides to attack Israel, the northern kingdom. These are in the days of Elijah the prophet. And so he makes this plan to ambush. So he stays and he finds a place where he thinks it's very necessary for them to pass if they're going out or coming in. That means going to attend to business on army scale, with armed forces and that. Or coming back home from attending to something. And the prophet Elijah is telling the king, don't pass here. So this Syrian king is planning to attack. And naturally, it's going to create a sense of uncertainty, maybe a little stressful moment for the king of Israel. Maybe it's just anxiety. Some of the emotions we all struggle with. But the king of Israel somehow was able to avoid the trap of the Syrian king's army. I don't know if the Syrian king went with him, it didn't say so, but the army. And the king of Syria got so upset, so angry, because his traps were being avoided. So he questioned his own men. Is there one of you here that's working with Israel as a spy? And of course, there wasn't. So one of the brave soldiers, no doubt, spoke up and said, there's a prophet. There's a prophet, a man of God on their side. And, O king, whatever you say in your bedroom, he tells it to the king of Israel. There's no privacy with you and him. He knows every plan that you're making. How does he know these plans? He's a man of God. Through his communication with God, who knows all things, nothing is hidden from him. He keeps his people informed and directs their affairs. So the king of Syria decided to send an armed force to get this man of God, this prophet. And that's how our story begins. Let me read a little bit for you. So he was told that this servant, this man of God, is telling the king of Israel everything that you say in your bedroom. And verse 13, so he, the king of Syria, said, go and see where he is, that I may send and get him. And it was told him, saying, surely he is in Dothan. Therefore he sent horses and chariots and a great army there, and they came by night and surrounded the city. And when the servant of the man of God, the servant, arose early and went out. There was an army surrounded the city with horses and chariots. And his servant said to him, Alas, my master, what shall we do? Couple little tidbits here. This is not our main lesson, but couple little tidbits here. Even the man of God who was so in touch with God had a servant. Why? God doesn't intend any of us to work in absolute isolation. He wants us to have partnership. We must learn to partner. It's a very important thing. When Jesus sent out his disciples, he sent them out 2 by 2. Why? The Ecclesiastes tells us that, 2 are better than 1. And you try it sometime and see. If you have a plank from a tree that fell or something, and you try to lift it, and it's too much for you, you get somebody to help you, and the 2 of you lift that thing away. But then weigh the plank and divide the weight between the 2 of you, and separately, you couldn't lift it. There's just some phenomena about us working together. But then there's always accountability. The man of God was accountable to God and to his king. And the servant of the man of God was accountable to the man of God. These are little lessons by product. And so we see the story unfolding before us, and we come to the verse I want to focus on, which is verse 16. So he, the prophet, the man of God, answered, Do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. And Elijah prayed, and he said, Lord, I pray, open the eyes that he may see. And then the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elijah. So often I've talked about the eye of faith. Sometimes we know about God because we read about him, we hear about him, we even talk about him. But do we really take the time to get to know God, to have that relationship with him, where we can trust him? We could put our confidence in him. Calm confidence that he's able and he will not disappoint us. No matter what the situation we are facing, we can forge ahead. Because we see with the eye of faith what is not normal to the eyes of men or women, the human eyes in its natural state. We're very limited. And that's very good because it makes us more dependent on the God whom we serve. Here's some lessons I picked out of this. I call it moral courage. A new perspective must be built on moral courage. We can't live immoral lives and ever hope to have the courage that moral courage brings. We must put away the things in our lives that are immoral and unacceptable. Gossiping and other immoralities that I don't even want to talk about. You know, some people think you're hiding and nobody would know. Nobody would know, but God knows. And the lesson is clear because the man of God was shown by God what God wanted him to know. It's a strange thing. When my ministry just began, I was green like a green banana. And I remember one morning I was standing and looking at the congregation, and God just revealed to me the hearts of some people. It's a very frightening thing because these are the people you're going to be working with, and the hearts of some people. And when you draw near to God, He'll do that with you too. I'm not above you or below you. I'm the same as anybody else. But building your relationship with God and getting to know Him, He will help you to instill those moral values that He has dictated for us. He has ordained for us. He has laid down for us. And He gave us a path to them through Jesus Christ on the cross of Calvary. So let's look at some of the moral values that helps us to be able to not succumb to what we see with the natural eye that scares us, that frightens us. Moral courage is gained by communion with God. Number one. The prophet communed with God. He didn't just make up the direction where to go. He prayed and asked God. If he felt he was able, because so many times he spoke to God and he might have declared and decree, as some people do. But it's prayer that reveals the mind of God, so the people of God can be encouraged. I think it was James, the brother of Jesus, that says you can't live a moral life and expect God to answer your prayer. It's not worded that way, but it means the same thing. So that's why we need to allow God to instill in us the moral values that He wants us to live by. Love, peace, joy, the fruit of the Spirit. And He's given us Holy Spirit to teach us and develop us in that. Not long ago, somebody asked me, they said, but Adrian, I remember you when you were young, I said, yeah. He says, how did you do this? I said, I could not do this transformation, but I surrendered to God and He transformed me to what He wanted me to be. Can you understand that? And every one of us must do that. We must first know God, not know about Him. And the only way you could do that is to separate yourself unto Him and get to know Him. It sounds like a sacrifice, but it's not. It's an investment in our lives that we must not miss upon. Then He starts to build those moral values in us because we can't do it on our own. You think you're doing it, but there's a lot of trash in there still that it has to be weeded out, and God does it His way. Sometimes you might see somebody at church still smoking a cigarette or something when church is over, and we say, look at that, he's still smoking. But then look at yourself, and maybe something in you is worse than somebody smoking. So let God do His work, but you submit yourself to Him, get to know Him, submit yourself to Him, and let Him instill the moral values that are necessary for us to relate to Him, to communicate with Him, and hear from Him, and let Him guide us. Prayer and meditation on God's Word. Not what the pastor said. What the pastor said is to stimulate you and to encourage you but to find the Word of God yourself. And you say, but I can't read. Well, you know what? Sometimes you get a young person, and then it's a beautiful double-edged sword, because that young person that's reading to you is learning while you're learning. Hello? You might see me up here sometimes fumbling to read. Yeah. But I won't give it up. And so that's what we have to do. We have to develop ourselves by prayer with meditation on God's Word. That means stopping and thinking about what it really says and questioning, what does this mean to me, and how would this help me? How did this improve me? And that's where moral change is gained, by the communion with God. We take communion here on mornings, but that communion with God is very different. You never leave without a little something if you desire something. I used to spend a few minutes in my office when I was a new Christian. And I never left the little office that I had there on my knees with my Bible in front of me without something. And God always used it during the course of the day. Somebody would come and talk to me and stress themselves out. And what I read that morning fit like a glove for that need. Start communing with God. Prayer, meditation of God's Word. Moral courage is a tower of strength. The prophet demonstrated moral courage. He was not afraid of the enemy and all the armies that surrounded the city and all of that, because his anchor was in Christ. And, well, in those days, Christ hadn't come yet, but in his God. He wasn't anchored in the beliefs of other people and in all the other lessons he learned from some university or Bible college or some school of prophets. What he learned with his relationship with God built in him a tower of strength that we're able to stand in times of need. Challenges come our way. People will not understand how you face it. They will not understand it. There were times in our lives when we were pastoring in Canada. We took an old van and we cleaned it out because the congregation was insisting we go to this revival because they wanted us to bring it home to the church and whatever. But we didn't want to be difficult, so we decided, okay, we'll go. It's not that they gave us money to take the plane and go down and for the hotel and that. They didn't have it. So we got this old van that was converted into a camper. And a friend and I, we rooted it all out and rebuilt it brand new inside and painted up the outside, make it look nice. It was a 1961. And this was in about 98 or 97. And away we went. But before we were going, we had no money. And we were just resolved, we'll trust the Lord. And after church that Sunday night, we were leaving the Monday morning. A man came home, knocked on the door, came inside, and gave us $1,000 to travel with. We were not able to make the trip But God saw the need. And we had the courage to trust him to take care of it because we did it before. We don't just crazy do things. When you learn what God wants you to do and you surrender in prayer and meditation and you build that moral courage and with the communion with God, you are becoming a strong tower because that relationship, God is inside of you, carrying you along with situations that seem impossible to you. And there's some things we do on our own and we create problems for our own selves. And he will let us struggle through it so we learn the lesson not to do that again. Like massive debts and all these things. And you say, did I really need it? No. Why did you do it? Well, it was nice. It was an opportunity. Look to God to give you the direction in your life. And when you get your direction, he will provide. I just can't remember the name of the guy now, but he started inland China's missions. The name will come back to me. The hard drive is overloaded, you know. And here's what he said. One man going into China, he studied medicine, and to complete his study in medicine so he's prepared for the task of missionary work in China, he ate apples and bread. That was his straight diet. And when he went into China and started the work, thousands and thousands of people were saved, and many missionaries joined him. Hudson Taylor. And here's what he said. He said, when God's work is done God's way, God always provides. So it's not just in missions. It's when your moral values become a tower of strength. You have learned how to do what you do and when to do what you do and trust God in doing what you are doing. Because it's not based on selfish ambitions. It's not based on envy of somebody else and you want to compete with them. It's based on yourself and God. And if ever there was an example of this for anybody, it's those of you who are sitting here now. Gateway Assembly. We did that. All the impossibilities that people looked at. And even now when the chairs are not full, we know there's a day when these seats will be all taken and this place will be a place with revival. We know that. But it's not my time, it's God's time. It's not my decision, it's God's decision. But we did the part we were called to do. And that's the tower of strength by knowing him. Proverbs 18:10. The name of the Lord is a strong tower, and the righteous run in, and they'll be safe. Not saved, you know, safe. So this moral courage becomes a strong tower to us, a tower of strength for the believer. Not the thinker, the one who thinks they believe, or I'm thinking about it, I haven't made up my mind. It has to become a resolve, a conviction within your soul that this is the direction I must go. Come what may, the Lord and I, not my strength, his strength, You had a speaker last Sunday, Reverend Thomas Welsh. Frail little man. But the impact of his words, where did it come from? The tower of strength that's within him, that's built from moral values, moral strength. Moral courage is not intimidated easily. You see, we have the strength is gained by the communion, and it becomes a tower of strength. And then we have to understand that it is not intimidated easily. We live in a society where people are whimpering. Look around you and see. Senior citizens are pushed aside. They say we did our time. We have more value now for the younger people because from our life's experiences and the wisdom God has given us, through those experiences, we can guide and say, hold on a second, if you go that way, it's going to cost you dearly. And they shake it up and they say, I'll go anyway. We don't have the physical strength that the young man has. But the moral strength, we stay quiet because what's the use? But don't think we don't know what's happening. You walk into the grocery store and they mark you with a sign that says senior priority line. And all the big carts with young people pushing them block it up. You go to the bank and you see seniors priority. Just one little teller for you. And you go to the teller and they say, take a number. I'm not getting off course. I'm making a point. When we are young and full of life, we feel we can control all things. And therefore we avert and skirt the moral issues, and the moral courage is lost and put aside for what we think. But the prophet didn't demonstrate that to his servant. He demonstrated what he knew. Because of his relationship with God, he knew. Without even looking on the hills, he knew that his God was able to see him through with whichever way he chooses to do it. But the armies on the hills with horses and chariots of fire, were there an illusion to the servant that God created to make him realize that you know, you don't have to worry yourself? Because most of us have to see it to believe it. But the prophet didn't have to look to see it. He asked God to open his eyes so he could see it. He knew that he had the power of God at his avail. So who is this Syrian general or whatever the Syrian army is that's coming against me? Who do you think they are? Self-motivated rather than God-stimulated. It comes from the moral issues that we are averting because we go to university and now I'm more educated than you, so I look down on you. But moral issues, the playing field is level. Everyone can access it. Rich or poor, black or white, Chinese or German. They can access it. It's not limited to a few. It's open for all of us. But it also inspires confidence. There was a preacher once that had a major problem. It was like the back door of the church flew open and people were just vanishing. That's just a terminology. In short, he was new to the church, several hundred people, and more than 60% of the people left. You know how that makes a preacher feel? They're all gone. Only the faithful few remained. And an old lady invited him over. She realized that he was probably a little disturbed. And he probably was. Because our humanness is still inside of us. We're still in this earthen vessels. But the treasure inside of us sometimes need to get a little spark, put it back to life. And that old lady took him in a room and showed him a picture of Daniel in the den of lions. And she says, have a look at this. What do you think? And he's looking at it. And he's slow to make a comment. So she realized he's not sure what she's thinking or what she's trying to show him. And she said, have a look at Daniel. The lions were all around and Daniel was looking through a little hole. Gazing at the heavens where his God is. Lions, know your place. I'm fixed on my God. It's a perfect illustration of what we're talking about when we said that moral courage inspires confidence. We are not afraid of all the issues that the immoral world is throwing at the church anymore. We're able to stand against it and say, okay, if you want to put me in prison, that's your business. But my business is to do and fulfill what my God has called me to do and fulfill. And if the church would come alive on that one issue, there'll be a great revival as never been known before. And that revival will come. Hear me, it will come. Because in the last days, when the tribulation starts to close in, men and women will have to make a decision who they are in Christ. And just for your information, the wave is cresting if you haven't noticed it. China is having dialogue with Russia. And the United States is getting tired because their own internal issues are overwhelming. And they had to leave certain places where they thought they were in control, or they should be in control, or they should restore order. And the attacks are surrounding. Are you hearing me? If you took Ezekiel verse 39, chapter 39 and read it, you'll see. Coming down from the north, countries that were redeemed are being retaken. And how far down would it come? What are we waiting for? What are we afraid of? We need moral change that can only be gained by communion with God. Prayer and meditation on His Word, which gives us the moral courage, the tower of courage that we need as believers in Jesus to stand up for right and righteousness and truth. and not be easily intimidated. The Apostle Paul tells his protege, his spiritual son, Timothy. He wrote it in 2 Timothy chapters 1 through 7. And maybe I will go there and read it just for a moment. I know it, but I want to read it directly from the word, just in case I say one word wrong and you didn't understand it. In verse 6 he says, "Therefore I remind you, because your grandmother had it, and your mother had it, and you have it." So what you didn't learn from your grandmother and your mother, or what you did learn from them, and you seem to be not paying attention to it, I'm reminding you. Stir up the gift of God which is in you through the laying of her hands. For God has not given you a spirit of fear or timidity, but what? 3 things. Power. You cannot receive the power without being morally prepared. Love. You cannot love unless you receive the gift of the Holy Spirit. What you call love would be mush. You'll exploit other people. We need the work of God in us to love with agape love. That's the love he's talking about. You could look it up, search it out. And a sound mind. You see, our mind, according to James chapter 3 and verse 15, is subject to the demonic. All the demonic activities of the world, principalities and powers in high places, bring thoughts to our mind. Oh, I see something and immediately think something. Where does that come from? Demonic. But when we are anchored with the power of God and the love of God, no immoral thoughts can linger in our minds. They might touch you, but you spit them out. And we're going to get tangled in foolishness because our minds become morally stimulated and preserved. That's what he's talking about. And this courage, moral courage, inspires confidence. Many of us, Pastor, I can't do that, No, I can't stand up in front of people now. I think I could just go and talk to a stranger just like that. What happens when they say that or they, you know how people answer back now? Let me give you an illustration of this thing, the foolishness of it. Many years ago, I was asked to come and pray at a graduation ceremony in the Trade Center. I pushed to get there on time. And the traffic in Grand Anse Valley, it blocked me. I figured, can I pass around and go back through and come back around Springs and come down and get there in time? I said, I don't think so. And I tried, and once I got through, I pushed it to get to the Trade Center. I looked at my watch, boy, I'm on time. Woo, just made it. They won't let me go. And the lady blocked me. I said, I have to do the opening prayer. She said, well, the Governor General reached already. So we had to wait till she sat down. And the Governor General is going up. I said, well, let me just go. I'll walk past and I'll go and say the prayer. She said, no. You wait. And then somebody juked somebody on the platform and he got up and prayed. And when I was through with all of that, she led me up on the platform and sit me down in front of everybody. I said, I don't want to go up. She said, yes, you had to go up. I didn't want to be rude and just leave and go. So I went up. What's the point I'm making? When it comes to God, we come when we're good and ready. But if the Governor General was present, and you can't go in after she reach, everybody come on time. So whom are we venerating? Political offices, presidents and kings and prime ministers and that. And our God, we said, well, anytime we'll do for He, because He's always with us, so we could go anytime. Why don't we develop moral stability and make ourselves do what is right before God? Give Him the very best and let the world have the rest. If you only knew who He was. If you only know who He is, you would lament over treating Him with less dignity than you would treat one of these earthly leaders. Hello? You're silent this morning. But it inspires the courage and confidence we need to carry on. And the last one, number 5, I hope you get this, because this is the crowning experience of Christianity, knowing God. And you cannot get to know Him without Jesus, because Jesus Himself is God. When God could find no human being who would qualify for the sacrifice of sin, He said, I love you so much. He veiled Himself in humanity. And He became a fetus in the uterus of a woman and was birthed through the birthing canal like any child, and yet leave her as a virgin so she could marry her husband. The supernatural and grace determines the victory in Jesus, because He came and walked the earth so we could identify with Him. Those of us who need to see could see, and those who need to believe could believe. And then He went to the cruel cross after being whipped and spat on and mocked, and the enemy who caused sin to enter the world was defeated on that cross. And all hell knew, because He went in and took the keys and loosed those who were in. Those who lived moral lives were loosed. And if you don't believe me, you need to read the book written by Josephus Flavius. The writings of Josephus, a Jewish historian, writing on Hebrew history and the times of Christ. He declared that it was seen. There's solid proof that those saints who had long died were seen in Jerusalem. And Jesus, the one who called Himself Messiah, was also seen. And yet He didn't believe. Yet He didn't subject Himself. Yet He chose not to become a part. He remained. 'd, 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 'd And some of us do that today. We remain with human superiority. I am in charge. I want to do what I want to do. Moral courage is conscious of being backed by a superior force. Moral courage is conscious of being backed by a superior force. No matter where you go, you know God is with me. You face that thing and sometimes you let tears out of your eyes because you can't control them. But you're not budging. I stand with Jesus. When I was in Canada and all this filth started coming out, I stood and preached like I'm preaching to you now. The church bought an insurance so that if I need a lawyer to defend me, I said, that's all right. Go ahead. A public liability or some kind of insurance that if I said something wrong and somebody took me to court and fearlessly I told them, I said, if I have to go into jail, I am going into jail, but I know who's going with me, not you. My Lord is there wherever I go. And moral confidence, I want you to embrace this thought this morning. It's a superior backing force. The boys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you could read the story in Daniel chapter 3, verses 16 through 18. They told the king, they said, "O king, you could put us in the furnace. We know our God is able to deliver us. And if even he chooses not to deliver us, I will not bow to your image of gold. If even he chooses not to deliver," when you have consciousness of that force that's with us and within us and enables us through moral consciousness, you're not afraid of death anymore. Dr. Martin Luther King, before they shot him, he was on a bus. And somebody took a shot at him in the bus. And the bullet grazed him. And the next time he spoke, he made it abundantly clear. Up until then, he had a fear of death. And he didn't know it. But after then, he said, if you fear death, you're not yet free. If you fear death, you're not yet free. Because this moral consciousness of the superior backing that is in us transfers us from this life, transposes us into the new life. We will not die. There's no death for those who have engaged Almighty God and have formed that relationship with Him. And there's no other way to do it than through Jesus Christ and going to the place where you could form communion with God through prayer and meditation on His Word. There's no other way. You could have a parade of preachers, you remain the same. Itching ears will grow on you. But when you have a resolve in your heart, Jesus is the sweetest name I know. And He's just the same as His lovely name. And on it goes. In 2010, I came back from Canada, and we were about to move in downstairs. Many of you won't remember. And when I saw Sister Herman was in the office, I saw a decline. I said, no, I have to go to work on this. And I forgot that it's the power of God that will do the work, and I started to try and do the work. I learned a beautiful lesson. I laid in the hospital. Sister Herman was the first to pray for me. Terrible pain in my body. I went home, and then the Marshall boys took me to the hospital next day. They took me to one doctor tonight, and then the next morning to the next. I lay in the hospital for 4 days. No food, no drink. Flat on my back. A beautiful time. And as I came to my senses, I said, Lord, there's only one thing I want to know to set my heart free. What will happen to my lovely wife? I can't leave her, abandon her. I don't want to go on until I know. Would you do that for me? Never spoke to me. But one of you, and you know who you are, took her to the beach, and we'll come back and pick her up and took her back home, and took her to the hospital to visit with me, and wait for her and take her back home. Yes, you're here this morning. And when I saw that, I said, okay, Lord, I'm yours, ready to go. But when the lesson was well learned, he sent me back. This morning, if you get nothing else, remember the starting place. It begins with moral courage can only be gained through communion with God. And Jesus is the way. Prayer and meditation in God's Word is the means. But the end result is the tower of strength within you that encourages you, not intimidated easily, and inspires confidence, and is conscious of being backed up by a superior source. The superior source, superior to all the world forces. With this, I'm going to close. You come and help me close the service. The United States Army, with all its arsenals, I got this from Dr. Billy Graham, can be put to naught, can be useless if the flu bug was released on them. How big is the flu bug? When you get the flu, you ever see it? No. But you feel the effects of it. 0.007 microns. You have to magnify it 7,000 times to get a glimpse of it. And yet it can put the whole arsenal, the whole army of the United States out of commission and service. That's our God, that tiny little thing, he could release it and put an end. We need moral courage more than ever before. With all the gender issues that's coming our way, and all the money problems that are being developed? Have you done groceries lately? You realize how expensive gasoline is? I had to change my vehicle and get a tiny one. Fishermen going to the sea and coming home practically empty. How they feed their family? Think about it. When the guys went to sea in Woburn, they used to bring home those big kakabawi, 2 on a tray, a woman going and sell. She have to cut it and give you a piece. Now you get in little kakabawi, you could hardly shoot them with a fish gun because they're so small. I went wrong in Monkpandy and I shot a lobster right in Monkpandy. It was so big we couldn't get a pot to cook it. We had to put it down this way and then break off the whiskers and turn it over the next way and boil it as boys. Where you seeing those things now? Supplies are depleting. Problems are increasing. But the power of God will stand secure forever.
Amen, amen, amen. Thank you, Jesus.
I hope this morning a new perspective can be formed for you, for us, that moral courage is available to all. We always be prepared. Jesus is the only proven way that I know. Jesus is the only one who's risen from the dead as proof. The question is, do you want it? Do you want this moral courage